The bullies thought it was funny, until the sound of 3 engines outside made the world stop breathing. A mafia boss in a black coat walked in, gazing like a gun barrel. The moment his eyes found the blind girl, the diner became a courtroom, and judgment was personal. At the window table sat Alice Butler, 16, her white cane folded like a sleeping knight beside her plate of untouched waffles. She was smiling at the scent drifting up, earbuds leaking faint Chopin, unaware that her morning was about to shatter. The boys didn't just mock her. They crossed a line that should never exist. One kicked her cane clattering across the tiles. Another appended an entire pitcher of ice-cold orange juice over her head, while a third filmed vertically, shouting, "Blind Girl Shower Challenge. Tag your friends." Hi family, if you've ever felt your heart stop when someone smaller was targeted, pause right now. Hit like, share this with one person who needs to remember decency still exists, and subscribe so we never stay silent again. Together we become the moment the world changes. Alice's life had never been gentle. Born with retinoblastoma that stole her sight at 3, she learned Braille piano by 7 and dreamed of Juilliard, fingers dancing over keys her mother Elena taught to pay the chemo bills. Every day brought pitying whispers or careless elbows, but nothing like this. This was cruelty designed to go viral. As the boys high-fived, every customer lowered their gaze. The waitress clutched coffee pots like shields. A trucker halfway out of his seat sank back down. Only Mateo, the 17-year-old busboy, dared step forward with towels, until Blake's older cousin grabbed him by the throat and hissed, "One word and your mother's deported by sunset." A single trembling hand still reached the floor, sliding Alice's back within reach. "I'm sorry," Mateo whispered, voice cracking, before vanishing into the kitchen. His kindness was a match struck in a storm. Bright, brave, and instantly snuffed out. Alice sat dripping, the coat of juice tightening on her skin like shame made liquid. She wanted to disappear, to fold into the music in her earbuds and never come back. Why did the world reward the loudest monsters? Her heart hammered against the laughter that now bragged about views and likes, oblivious to the soul they were breaking. She bowed her head, orange juice dripping from her lashes, and prayed for the minute hand to race. 8 minutes later, something impossible happened. It began with the softest click, 3 matte black Maybachs gliding into the lot like sharks cutting glass, doors opening in perfect unison though no engine had ever growled. Heads turned. Conversation died mid-sentence. Forks froze. Everyone in Los Angeles knew those cars belonged to one man, and that man did not make house calls. The bell above the door jingled once, then silence fell so heavy the griddle itself stopped sizzling. Ian Campbell stepped inside alone, black cashmere coat brushing the floor, onyx cufflinks catching the neon like warning shots. For lieutenants in Brioni suits fanned out behind him, tattoos peeking at collars, eyes scanning for threats that no longer dared breathe. Alice felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. She didn't need sight to know power had entered the room. Ian's gaze sliced through the diner, locked on the 5 boys now shrinking in their designer hoodies, and finally softened, impossibly, when it landed on the girl in the soaked yellow dress. He walked straight to her, boots silent on the checkered floor, and knelt so his lips were level with her ear. With a silk pocket square, he gently wiped the juice from her cheek. "Your mother saved my soul with Chopin when I had nothing," he murmured, Scottish accent rolling like distant thunder. "Today I return the debt." Blake actually whispered "Campbell," and wet himself on the red vinyl seat. Ian rose, snapped his fingers once. Phones were torn from trembling hands and held like mirrors. "Apologize," he said, voice soft enough to cut steel. "Like your lives depend on it, because they do." One by one the bullies dropped to their knees on the sticky linoleum, recording tear-streaked confessions addressed to Alice Butler by name, live-streamed to their own million-follower accounts. Ian drew a gold switchblade, sliced the laces of $5,000 sneakers. "Walk home barefoot," he smiled without warmth. "The ground feels different when you're small." He tapped his phone, $50, 000 transferred to the diner's register. "Anything Alice wants forever is on me." Then he unbuttoned his floor-length cashmere coat, draped it over her shivering shoulders like a fortress, and whispered so only she could hear, "From this moment on, the city itself will blink before it touches you." Alice's fingers closed around the warm wool. For the first time since the juice poured, she laughed, a small, bell-like sound that shattered the room harder than any threat. She reached out, found Ian's hand, and asked, "Will you sit and eat waffles with me?" The most feared man on the West Coast cut her pancakes into perfect triangles while grown men at the counter wiped tears they'd never admit to shedding. 8 minutes of hell became 15 minutes of legend. If this story just rewrote something inside you, hit subscribe right now, turn on the bell, and comment, "Protect Alice" below. Because the next time a girl in a yellow dress needs us, we won't be the ones looking away. But none of us in that diner that morning could have guessed how deep the roots of this moment truly ran. How a terrified Scottish runaway bleeding on a piano bench 20 years ago had just paid the oldest debt in the world, with interest. The clock above the counter read 9:07 when the last drop of orange juice slid from Alice's bangs and splattered onto the table like a period at the end of a sentence no one wanted to read. 8 minutes. That was all it had taken for her world to turn from quiet music and warm waffles into a cage of laughter and flashing phone screens. Alice had known cages before. She was 3 when the doctor said the word retinoblastoma, when the world went from soft colors to permanent black. She remembered none of it, only the stories her mother told between piano scales. How Elena sold her own wedding ring to cover the first round of chemo, how she taught rich kids Chopin in a cramped studio so Alice could keep her eyes even if she'd never see through them again. By 7, Alice was reading Braille faster than most kids read picture books, her small fingers racing across raised dots while Elena's students waited in the hallway. "One day you'll play Carnegie," Elena would whisper, pressing a kiss to the scar hidden beneath Alice's hair. "And every note will be a thank you to the universe for letting you stay." The universe, it seemed, had a short memory. Across the diner, Blake Harrington leaned back against the red vinyl, phone angled for the perfect close-up of Alice's trembling chin. "Yo, chat's blowing up," he laughed, voice syrupy with privilege. 10K gifts already. We're hitting 1 million views by lunch. Hunter, trust fund haircut, Rolex peeking from a hoodie sleeve, zoomed in on the puddle spreading beneath Alice's chair. Caption this: when your Uber Eats driver can't see the tip. Sky, influencer lips curled, added her own overlay text in neon pink. #blindgirlshower, #send it. Blake's father was Marcus Harrington, executive VP at Apex Pictures, the man who buried 3 DUIs, 2 assault charges, and an entire boarding school expulsion under NDAs thicker than phone books. Consequences were for poor people. Everyone knew that. Alice couldn't see the phones, but she felt them like heat lamps. The sticky rivers in her hair cooled into glue. Every giggle ricocheted off the chrome walls and slammed into her chest like shrapnel. She reached for her cane, gone. Her anchor, her sword, her only way to map a safe path through the world, kicked somewhere under booth 6. Without it she was just a girl drowning in sound. The laughter grew teeth. "Bet she can't even find the door," Hunter snorted. "Bet she cries harder if we take her earbuds," Sky suggested, already sliding from her seat. Behind the counter, Mateo's hands shook so badly the coffee pot rattled. His mother had crossed the border with nothing but a rosary and a promise. One call from the wrong person and she'd be gone by nightfall. Still, his thumbs flew across a cracked screen hidden beneath the dish rack. Mateo, something evil happening inside diner. Booth 7. Blind girl. They poured juice on her. Filming. Send help now. Sunset and Crescent Heights. He hit send, heart hammering louder than the jukebox. Alice's fingers scraped the floor, searching for the familiar metal curve of her cane. Nothing. The scent of citrus burned her nose. Syrup and shame coated her tongue. She tasted blood. She'd bitten her lip so hard trying not to sob on camera. Somewhere in the dark behind her eyes, the little girl who once believed music could fix anything curled into a ball and waited for the lights to come back on. They never did. But 8 minutes was almost up. 9:02 a.m. 42 floors above downtown Los Angeles, Ian Campbell stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, watching the city glitter like broken glass. On the screen of his phone, a grainy security feed from Sunset Boulevard Diner played in perfect silence. A girl in a yellow dress. Orange juice cascading over dark hair. 5 laughing faces. A white cane skittering across tiles like a frightened animal. Ian's knuckles went white around the phone. The scar that ran through his left eyebrow, souvenir from a Glasgow alley, burned the way it always did when old ghosts stirred. On the grand piano behind him, 10-year-old Sophia's small hands stumbled through Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat. The zoom window was open on the lid. Elena Butler's gentle voice floated through the speakers, patient, steady, exactly the same as 20 years ago. Soft hands, soft, let the keys breathe. Ian couldn't breathe. Memory slammed into him without mercy. He was 17 again, bleeding on cracked linoleum in a tiny Echo Park studio, clutching a switchblade that had already done too much damage. Rival gang outside, sirens closing in. He'd kicked open the first door he saw and collapsed against a piano bench. Elena, 25, exhausted from double shifts, hadn't screamed. She'd locked the door, pressed a towel to the gash in his side, and started playing Chopin, slow and low, until the teenage killer in her living room stopped shaking. Until the boy who'd never been held sobbed like a child. She never asked his name. She never called the cops. She just played until the bleeding stopped and the sirens faded. "Debt paid in music," she'd whispered when he tried to thank her. "One day you'll pass it on." He'd sworn he would. Back in the present, Sophia hit a wrong note. Elena's voice corrected gently. Ian's reflection in the window looked suddenly old. The girl on the screen was Elena's daughter, Alice, yellow dress soaked, searching for her cane with trembling fingers. Ian's jaw clenched so hard the scar pulled white. He snapped the phone shut with a sound like a gunshot. "We ride. Now." The words left no room for questions. For lieutenants materialized from the shadows of the hallway. Black suits, black ties, faces carved from granite. No one spoke. They didn't need to. 30 seconds later, 3 matte black Maybachs rose from the underground garage on silent electric lifts. No engine roar, no exhaust. Just the whisper of Michelin tires on polished concrete and the soft click of armored doors. Ian slid into the center car, cashmere coat pooling like liquid night. The driver didn't wait for an address. He already knew. As the convoy ghosted through downtown, traffic cameras flipped green in perfect sequence. Somebody in the control room owed Ian a favor older than most of these kids' trust funds. Red lights bled to emerald like the city itself was holding its breath. 20 years of blood, money, and nightmares compressed into 8 minutes of asphalt. Ian stared straight ahead, ice-blue eyes fixed on a morning he thought he'd buried long ago. Somewhere in the distance, a girl in a yellow dress was still dripping. And the debt, the one written in Chopin and teenage tears, was finally due. The 3 Maybachs stopped in a flawless line, doors closing with a single synchronized thud that sounded like the city itself exhaling. 8 black shoes hit the asphalt without a scuff. Then nothing. No engines. No voices. Just the low hum of a neon sign flickering above the diner like it knew what was coming. For lieutenants moved first. Brioni suits cut so sharp they could slice bread. Tattoos crawled above starched collars like secrets trying to escape. They pushed through the glass door in perfect formation, 2 left, 2 right, eyes sweeping every booth, every exit, every trembling hand holding a phone. No one was asked to lower their cameras. They simply did. The air itself seemed to obey. Then Ian Campbell stepped inside. Neon bled across onyx cufflinks shaped like Scottish thistles. The cashmere coat whispered against the floor like a warning. Every bulb in the diner dimmed a fraction, as if the electricity recognized its master and bowed. Absolute silence fell so hard the griddle on the grill stopped sizzling mid-pancake. Ian didn't scan the room. He didn't need to. His gaze cut straight through the frozen crowd and locked on the girl in the yellow dress, dripping orange rivers onto cracked vinyl. Alice felt the shift before she heard it, like the moment before thunder when the air pressure drops and your skin knows the storm has arrived. Ian crossed the checkered floor in 5 silent strides. The lieutenants formed a black wall behind him, sealing the bullies inside their booth like rats in a trap. He knelt. Cashmere pooled around his knees. One large hand, scarred across the knuckles, reached out. A silk pocket square, monogrammed IC in crimson thread, brushed the sticky juice from Alice's cheek with a tenderness that made grown men look away so they wouldn't cry. "Your mother saved my soul with Chopin when I had nothing," he murmured, Scottish burr rolling low and warm against her ear. "Today I return the debt." Alice's breath hitched. The voice was gravel and velvet and something ancient she couldn't name, but it wrapped around her like the first safe thing she'd felt all morning. Across the booth, Blake Harrington went the color of spoiled milk. Campbell. The name slipped out of him like a confession. A dark stain spread across the front of his $300 jeans. No one laughed this time. Hunter tried to stand. One lieutenant's hand settled on his shoulder, gentle as a breeze, heavy as concrete. Sky's phone slipped from manicured fingers and clattered to the floor. The screen cracked in the shape of a breaking heart. Ian didn't look at them yet. His eyes, pale as winter locks, stayed on Alice. "Ye still have music in ye, lass?" he asked softly. She nodded, orange juice dripping from her lashes like tears she refused to give them. "Good," he said. "Then this is only the overture." He rose slowly, coat falling back into perfect lines, and finally turned to the 5 boys who had thought cruelty was free. The temperature in the diner dropped another 10 degrees. Ian turned back to the kneeling boys. "Look at her." 5 heads lifted. 5 pairs of eyes met Alice's sightless ones across the booth. "This class can't see your tears," Ian said, voice low, almost tender. "But she'll hear every word you just bled into the internet. And the world will remember long after your sneakers rot." He snapped his fingers again, sharp as a guillotine. The lieutenants moved like a single organism. Designer hoodies were wrenched upward, phones thrust forward until each bully stared into their own live stream mirrored back at them in merciless 4K. The chat still scrolled, but the tone had flipped. 10,000 new comments poured in every second. At Truth Warrior 88, "Y'all just ended your whole bloodline." At Mama Bear LA, "Campbell don't miss." At Justice Served Hot, "Barefoot SZN starts today." "Volume up," Ian commanded. The speakers screamed. Their own laughter from 8 minutes ago boomed through the diner, layered with the wet slap of orange juice and Alice's sharp intake of breath. Then the comments, every cruel emoji, every laughing crying face, read aloud by the same mouths that had typed them. Blake's voice cracked first. "I said, blind girls cry harder when it's citrus, and I tagged Juilliard telling them tuition just got wet." He gagged on the words like poison. Hunter tried to close his eyes. A lieutenant's thumb pried one lid open. "Keep watching, Prince. This is your highlight reel." Sky's turn. Between sobs she read her own overlay text in a broken whisper, #BlindGirlShower, because some people deserve to be viral trash. The chat exploded again, this time with fire emojis under her name. Ian let it play until the last giggle died into a whimper. Then he crouched, eye level with the wreckage. "Apologize," he said, soft as a lullaby, lethal as a garrote. "Like your lives depend on it." Because they do. Phones flipped to record. 5 red dots blinked alive. Blake first, face swollen, snot shining. "Alice Butler, my name is Blake Harrington, and I'm sorry I kicked your cane and poured juice on your head and laughed while you cried. I'm a coward and a bully, and I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging for it anyway." Hunter next. Voice shredded. "Alice, I filmed it. I zoomed in on your tears for likes. I'm disgusted. Please forgive me." Sky couldn't even look at the lens. "Alice Butler, I made it trend. I wanted you broken for content. I'm so sorry." One by one, 5 tear-streaked apologies, each addressed to Alice by full name, tagged Sunset Boulevard Diner, uploaded instantly to accounts with millions of followers. Within 30 seconds, the videos rocketed past the original livestream in views. #AliceButlerApology shot to #1 worldwide. Ian watched the numbers climb without blinking. He straightened, drew a gold switchblade from his coat pocket. The blade flicked open with a lover's sigh. Light slid along the edge like a liquid threat. He knelt again, slow and deliberate. One by one he sliced the laces of $5,000 sneakers clean through, Balenciaga, Off-White, limited edition Yeezys, until each shoe flopped uselessly around shaking ankles. "Walk home barefoot," he said, almost kindly. 10 miles of sunset pavement. Feel every crack, every piece of broken glass. Remember the ground feels different when you're small. Blake tried to stand. His left shoe stayed on the floor like a dead thing. He stared at his bare sock on sticky linoleum and started crying harder than when the knife came out. Ian rose, slipped the switchblade away, and pulled out his phone. One tap. The ancient cash register dinged like a jackpot. $50,000. He laid the phone face up on the counter so everyone could see the confirmation. "Alice eats free here for life," he told the stunned cashier. "Every waffle, every milkshake, every sunrise she wants. On me. Forever." The receipt printer spat out a strip long enough to wrap around the room. The cashier's hands shook so badly she dropped it. It fluttered to the floor like a surrender flag. Ian turned back to the 5 barefoot statues on the linoleum. "Crawl if you have to," he said. "But leave this place the way you made her feel, small, exposed, and praying for it to end." The front door opened on its own. Sunlight poured in like judgment. The door swung shut behind the last barefoot bully, leaving only the echo of their broken apologies and the faint slap of bare soles on hot pavement. The diner held its breath, afraid to shatter whatever spell had just rewritten the morning. Ian Campbell stood in the sudden quiet like a dark king who just burned a village to save a princess. Then he turned back to Alice. She was still dripping, yellow dress clinging like wet paper, orange juice drying into a sticky crown around her hairline. Her hands searched the table blindly, looking for something solid to hold onto. Ian unbuttoned his floor-length cashmere coat, $40,000 of midnight black Italian wool, and let it slide from his shoulders. The fabric sighed as it left him, pooling like liquid shadow. He stepped forward and draped it over Alice's small, shaking frame. The coat swallowed her whole. Sleeves hung past her fingertips, hem pooled on the floor like a fortress wall. Warmth, real, impossible warmth, wrapped around her like arms she'd never known she was missing. Alice's fingers clutched the lapels. The scent of cedar and smoke and something dangerously safe flooded her senses. She tilted her head toward the voice that had cut through her nightmare. Who are you?" The question came out small, cracked, but brave. Ian leaned close, lips brushing the shell of her ear so only she could hear. "Family, lass," he murmured in that Scottish lilt thick as winter honey. "From this day forward. Family." He slid into the booth opposite her as naturally as if he'd been sitting there every Saturday for 16 years. The vinyl creaked under his weight. A fresh plate of vanilla waffles appeared, the waitress's hand still trembling so hard the whipped cream wobbled. Ian picked up the fork. With the same hands that had just sliced through $1,000 sneakers, he cut the waffles into perfect, delicate triangles. Precise. Patient. Reverent. He speared the first piece, lifted it to Alice's lips. "Open," he said softly. She did. The waffle touched her tongue, warm, sweet, untouched by cruelty. For the first time since the pitcher tipped, Alice let out a breath that wasn't a sob. At the counter, a trucker with arms like hams wiped his eyes with a napkin that shredded under the pressure. Another man, 60 if he was a day, Harley patches on his vest, stared into his coffee and let tears fall straight into the cup without shame. The waitress openly wept while refilling salt shakers that didn't need refilling. Ian fed Alice another bite. And another. Until half the plate was gone and the shaking in her shoulders had eased into something quieter. Only then did he speak again. "Matteo," he called without raising his voice. The busboy froze halfway out of the kitchen, eyes wide as dinner plates. "Come here, son." Matteo approached like a deer expecting the rifle. Ian never looked up from cutting the next perfect triangle. "That threat about your mother," Ian said, spearing a blueberry. "Consider it ash." He pulled out his phone, tapped once, slid it across the table. The screen showed a confirmed appointment with the best immigration attorney in California. Monday, 9 a.m., full retainer paid. Matteo stared. His mouth opened. Closed. It opened again. "And USC called," Ian continued, lifting the fork to Alice's lips. "They've got a full-ride scholarship with your name on it. Fall semester starts. Tell your mum she can stop cleaning houses." Matteo dropped to his knees right there beside the booth, forehead pressed to the floor, sobbing in Spanish too fast for anyone to follow. Ian reached down without looking and rested a hand on the boy's head like a blessing. Alice swallowed the bite she'd been holding. Then, small at first, like a music box winding up, Laughter spilled out of her. Pure, bell-like, unstoppable. It danced across the diner and shattered the last of the fear hanging in the air like stained glass hitting tile. The sound was so unexpected, so bright, that the trucker laughed through his tears. The waitress laughed so hard she had to sit down. Even the lieutenants, stone-faced statues seconds ago, cracked the tiniest smiles at the edges of their mouths. Alice laughed until her sides hurt, until orange juice tears mixed with happy ones, until the cashmere coat shook around her like a living thing. Ian watched her with something ancient and soft in his ice-blue eyes. "Welcome home, little sister," he whispered. And for the first time in 16 years, Alice believed the world might actually be big enough to hold her after all. The laughter faded into soft hiccups, the kind that come after a storm when the sky forgets how to be angry. Alice sat wrapped in $40,000 cashmere, cheeks flushed, waffle plate empty except for one perfect triangle Ian had saved for last. The diner smelled like vanilla and redemption now. Outside, the city was already screaming. By noon, #ProtectAlice sat at #1 worldwide, 32 million uses and climbing. The apology videos, 5 barefoot, tear-streaked confessions, had rocketed past 25 million views each. Blake's original Blind Girl Shower Challenge had been scrubbed from every platform in existence, replaced by a single community guidelines strike that read, "Permanent removal, Campbell Protocol." Phones buzzed so hard in pockets that the counter looked like it was vibrating. The waitress kept refilling coffee nobody was drinking just to have something to do with her hands. Then the text came. Marcus Harrington, Blake's father, studio VP, king of backroom deals, fired off a frantic message from the Apex Pictures tower downtown. Unknown number. Ian, name your price. 10 million. 20. Whatever it takes to make this go away. My son's future. Ian never looked up from wiping whipped cream from Alice's chin with the silk pocket square. He thumbed a single reply with one hand. Touch her, lose everything. He hit send, set the phone face down, and speared the final waffle triangle. At 2:57 p.m. the news broke. Marcus Harrington terminated, effective immediately, for conduct unbecoming. The studio's official statement was 3 lines. The unofficial one, whispered in every boardroom from Burbank to Beijing, was one word: Campbell. By 3 o'clock, news vans formed a neon circus outside the diner. Satellite dishes bloomed like metal flowers. Reporters shouted questions at the locked glass door while lieutenants stood in front of it like statues carved for midnight. Inside, a new sound cut through the chaos. Tires on gravel, hurried, familiar. The bell jingled. Elena Butler burst through, piano teacher bun coming undone, cheeks streaked with mascara and tears. She didn't see the cameras, didn't see the lieutenants parting like the Red Sea. She saw only the small girl in the oversized coat and the tall man feeding her waffles like the world hadn't just turned itself inside out. Elena's sob cracked the room in half. Ian stood slowly. For the first time all morning, the untouchable king of Los Angeles looked uncertain. Elena crossed the floor in 4 strides and threw her arms around him like he was the boy bleeding on her studio floor 20 years ago. "You came," she whispered into his shoulder. "You really came." Ian's arms closed around her carefully, like he was holding something holy he'd been terrified was lost forever. "I promised," he said, voice rough. "In Chopin and blood." Alice reached out blindly. "Mom!" Elena dropped to her knees, gathered her daughter, coat and all, into the tightest embrace the booth had ever seen. Cashmere and vanilla and maternal heartbeat swallowed Alice whole. The diner watched in reverent silence. Someone's phone flash went off by accident. A lieutenant crushed it under Italian leather without breaking eye contact with the offender. Ian stepped back, cleared his throat. "Sophia's lesson is cancelled today," he told Elena quietly. "And every Thursday from now on. You'll teach her at the house. Full salary. No more night students." Elena tried to protest. Ian's look stopped her cold. He turned to 2 women who had appeared at the edges of the room like smoke taking human form. Both wore tailored charcoal suits, hair in severe ponytails, eyes that had seen things civilians only read about in redacted files. "Rivka. Noah." Ian tilted his head toward Alice. "My sister needs shadows. The best. 24/7. You move when she moves. You breathe when she breathes. Rivka, ex-Mossad, scar across her left cheek, gave a short nod. Noah, younger, smile like a hidden blade, winked at Alice. Big sisters reporting for duty, Noah said in perfect, lightly accented English. Anyone touches you, they lose the hand. Alice laughed again, smaller this time, but brighter. She reached out. Two calloused, capable palms closed around hers like steel wrapped in velvet. The waitress slid a fresh milkshake across the table, strawberry, extra thick, 2 cherries. Alice wrapped her fingers around the cold glass, took a long pull, then set it down with purpose. Phone, she said simply. Rivka produced one instantly. Alice held it up, thumb hovering over the record button. Hi, she said to the lens, voice steady as a heartbeat. This is Alice Butler. I can't see you, but I felt every single one of you standing with me today. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. She smiled, the kind that made the room tilt. Also, my new big sisters say hi. And the waffles here are free forever, so, come say hello sometime. She ended the recording. Noah uploaded it before the strawberry milkshake had time to sweat. Within 60 seconds, #ProtectAlice hit 50 million. Ian watched the numbers climb, something ancient and peaceful settling behind his ice-blue eyes. Outside, the news vans kept shouting. Inside, a blind girl in a Kashmir fortress drank strawberry milkshake with her mother's arms around her and 2 of the deadliest women on earth arguing over who got to paint her nails first. The city had heard. The city would never forget. The strawberry milkshake had long since melted into pink puddles on the diner table, but the promise it carried stayed warm. 1 month later, a matte black Maybach, the same one that had glided like a shark that Saturday morning, rolled to a stop at the gates of Ian Campbell's clifftop mansion in Pacific Palisades. The Pacific stretched below like a restless blue animal, restless and endless. Rivka and Noah stepped out first, scanning the horizon out of habit. Then Alice, cane tapping confidently now, yellow dress replaced by soft white cotton that fluttered in the salt wind. Ian waited on the front steps, no coat today, sleeves rolled high enough to show the faded tattoo of a thistle wrapped in piano keys. When he saw her, something in his shoulders unclenched for the first time in 30 days. Welcome home, little sister, he said, voice rough with the kind of emotion men like him usually buried under 6 feet of concrete. Alice smiled, tilted her head the way she did when she was mapping a room by echo. You said that last time. Starting to believe you mean it. Ian offered his arm. She took it without hesitation. Rivka and Noah hung back, giving them the illusion of privacy while never letting more than 10 feet separate them from their charge. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and money and something softer, fresh lilies Elena had sent every week since the diner. Ian led her past the marble foyer, past the glass wall that looked straight down the cliff to the ocean, and into a room Alice felt before she heard it. The air changed, became reverent, the way it does inside cathedrals or concert halls. A 1926 Steinway Grand waited in the center, lid open like a black wing. Alice's fingers found the keys the way other people find their mother's heartbeat. Play for me, Ian said quietly. She didn't need asking twice. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major poured out of her like light through stained glass. The same piece Elena had played the night a bleeding Scottish boy stumbled into her studio 20 years ago. The same piece Sophia practiced every Thursday under Elena's patient Zoom guidance. The same piece that had stitched a terrified teenager's soul back together with silver threads of melody. Alice played it better than anyone Ian had ever paid to hear in sold-out halls. Every note carried the weight of hospital corridors, of orange juice shame, of a mother's exhausted lullabies, of a city that had finally blinked. Ian stood behind her, unseen tears sliding down the scar that cut through his eyebrow. He didn't wipe them away. For the first time since he was 17, he let himself cry where someone could witness it. When the final chord dissolved into the salt air, the room stayed silent so long the ocean outside sounded like applause. Alice's hands rested on the keys. I felt you, she whispered. Back there. You were crying. Ian cleared his throat, the sound like gravel under boots. Old men get sentimental. She turned on the bench, reached up until her palm found the wet track on his cheek. Tell me something true, Ian Campbell. He covered her hand with his. Anything. You built something for me. Mom won't say what. But the way her voice shakes when she mentions Juilliard. I know it's you. Ian exhaled, half laugh, half surrender. Come. He led her to the far wall, pressed a hidden panel. A screen lowered silently, architectural renderings glowing to life. A state-of-the-art recording studio, glass walls looking over Central Park, plaque already engraved. Alice Butler Performance and Recording Studio. Fully endowed in perpetuity. For every child who ever learned to soar on keys instead of wings. Alice's breath caught. She traced the braille label someone had thoughtfully added beneath the rendering. It's yours, Ian said. Opens the same week you audition. Every cent, every scholarship, every soundproof panel. Paid forward from a debt I'll never outrun. Alice turned, threw her arms around his waist, buried her face in the soft cotton of his shirt. Ian's arms closed around her like a fortress that had finally found its purpose. They stayed that way until the sun began its slow bleed into the Pacific. Then Alice pulled back, tilted her face toward the glass wall she couldn't see but could feel in the warmth on her skin. Tell me what the ocean looks like, she said. Really looks like. Not the postcard version. The true one. Ian sat on the floor, king of Los Angeles on imported Italian tile, and pulled her down beside him. She curled into his side like she'd done it 1,000 times, head on his shoulder, legs tucked under the white dress. For 40 minutes he spoke, voice low and rolling like the tide itself. It's never the same color twice, lass. Right now it's molten sapphire shot through with gold where the sun's bleeding out. Earlier it was gunmetal, angry, throwing white knives at the cliff. Tomorrow it might be the color of your mother's eyes when she's trying not to cry. It roars like a drunk giant 1 minute and whispers secrets the next. There's a line out there, the horizon, where the water kisses the sky so gently you'd swear they were lovers who forgot how to fight. Sometimes dolphins stitch silver threads through it like living needles. Sometimes oil slicks paint it wrong. But mostly it's just vast. So vast it makes every empire I ever built feel like sandcastles waiting for the tide. Alice listened without moving, cheek against his heartbeat, fingers tracing the thistle tattoo on his forearm. When he finished, the sun had vanished and the first stars were pricking holes in the indigo. Thank you, she whispered. Now I've seen it. Ian pressed a kiss to the top of her head, the way he'd never dared with his own daughter yet. Any time you need the ocean, you call me. I'll describe it till my voice gives out. Outside, in the shadows of the city he ruled with blood and fear, word had spread like wildfire through every dark alley and penthouse alike. The blind girl in the yellow dress was Campbell's sister now. Touch her, touch anyone like her, and the Pacific would gain new concrete anchors before sunrise. By morning, the crime rate against disabled youth in Los Angeles had dropped 60% overnight. Not because hearts suddenly grew kinder, some never would, but because the monsters finally understood the bigger monster had chosen a side. And that side played Chopin like a battle hymn. The Pacific was still whispering its secrets against the cliffs when the sun rose 1 year to the day after orange juice became a baptism of shame. Los Angeles woke to a new sign glowing above the old Chrome Diner on Sunset and Crescent Heights. Alice's Lighthouse. Free waffles every sunrise for anyone who's ever felt small. Opening days smelled like vanilla and salt wind and second chances. The parking lot had been transformed overnight. White tents, string lights, a red carpet that led straight to the front door. News helicopters circled like curious gulls. 1,000 people stood behind velvet ropes, phones raised. But this time they weren't recording cruelty. Ian Campbell stood at the entrance in a charcoal suit cut sharper than any blade he'd ever carried. In his hand, a pair of gold scissors that cost more than most cars. Beside him, Alice, 17 now, taller, white cane painted sunrise gold, wore a dress the color of the ocean at noon. Rivka and Noah flanked her like deadly bridesmaids, eyes soft for once. Elena stood on Alice's other side, clutching a champagne bottle wrapped in silk ribbon. Her piano teacher bun had been replaced by loose waves threaded with tiny braille beads that spelled hope. The mayor tried to make a speech. Ian's look shut him down after 6 words. This wasn't politics. This was family. Ian handed Alice the scissors. Your lighthouse, lass. You cut the ribbon. She tilted her head, listening to the crowd's heartbeat. Then, with a grin that could restart the sun, she snipped. Gold fabric fluttered to the ground like a promise kept. The crowd roared. Someone started chanting, "A lice! A lice!" until the whole block shook with it. Ian stepped aside as Alice tapped her way to the entrance. Elena passed her the champagne. Alice swung by sound alone, crack against the chrome doorframe. Foam exploded in a perfect arc, catching the morning light like liquid diamonds. Inside, the old booths had been reupholstered in butter-yellow leather. Every table held a small plaque, protected by Campbell. No one sits alone. And there, in the corner booth where hell had begun, sat 5 familiar faces in matching aprons. Blake, Hunter, Sky, the cousins. They wore name tags that read community service. Court ordered. 150 weekends. Ian's signature at the bottom in ink that might as well have been blood. Blake's hands shook as he poured coffee for a little girl in a wheelchair. Hunter cleared tables with his head down, barefoot scars still visible on his heels. Sky refilled syrup pitchers while reciting apologies under her breath like rosary beads. Ian watched from the doorway, arms crossed. When Blake dared glance up, Ian gave a single nod. Not forgiveness. Accountability. The difference mattered. The counter had been rebuilt into a stage. A single microphone. A baby grand painted sunrise gold. National television cameras, 42 million live viewers, zoomed in as Alice took her seat. She didn't speak first. She played. Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu poured out like liquid sunrise, every note a middle finger to the morning that had tried to break her. The diner fell silent except for the music and the sound of grown men forgetting how to breathe. When the final chord faded, Alice leaned into the mic. 1 year ago, she said, voice steady as a heartbeat, 5 people poured juice on my head and thought they'd won. Today, they pour coffee for strangers and call it redemption. Today, this diner belongs to every kid who ever felt invisible. Today, the lighthouse is lit. She stood. The crowd outside roared so loud the windows rattled. Breakfast is on me, she laughed. Forever. The feed cut to commercial. 42 million people hit replay. Later, when the sun was high and the waffles were gone and the bullies had scrubbed floors until their knees bled, a different Maybach, this one white, pulled up across from Lincoln Center in New York. Juilliard audition day. Alice stepped out in a simple black dress, cane tapping a confident rhythm against Manhattan pavement. Rivka and Noah followed at a distance now, big sisters who taught her how to throw a punch and how to forgive in the same summer. She couldn't see the crowd gathered behind the barricades. Couldn't see the banner that read Alice's Army, We See You. Couldn't see the single black Maybach parked beneath a maple tree, tinted windows cracked just enough for ice-blue eyes to watch. But she felt him. Alice paused on the sidewalk, tilted her head toward the car she couldn't see but knew was there. I've got the ocean in my pocket, she called, loud enough for the whole block to hear. You described it. Now I get to live it. Inside the Maybach, Ian Campbell, the most dangerous man in any city he walked into, let the tears fall without shame. Go soar, little sister, he whispered to the glass. Alice smiled, tapped her cane once, like a conductor's baton, and walked through the doors that would never close on her again. 8 minutes of hell became a lifetime of protection. Because sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is the one who owes a piano teacher everything. And sometimes, when the world tries to drown a girl in orange juice, the ocean itself rises up to carry her home.